For lesson 2, we'll be studying the coordinate plane. And the coordinate plane just extends that quadrant 1 graph that we looked at yesterday onto a plane with negative numbers. Okay, so let's take a look at our negative number lines just to review before we move into the coordinate plane. Okay, to remind ourselves, the vertical number line is the one that's up and down, and the horizontal number line is the one that's left and right. Okay, so -3 on the vertical number line. We're going to go over here. We're going to go down from 0, and in between the -2 and the -4, that is the -3. So that's a truck. 4 on the horizontal number line. Go over to the +4. That's a hot air balloon. Okay, the sailboat. I see that at -2 on the horizontal number line. Okay, the motorcycle, that is definitely on the vertical number line, and it's between the 0 and the 2, so it's at the 1. So 1 on the vertical number line. 5 on the vertical number line, that's going to be between the 4 and the 6, so right here, and that's a helicopter. Okay, and lastly, the rocket. The rocket is on the horizontal number line, and it's between the -4 and the -6, which means we're at -5 on the horizontal number line. Okay, so that's just a review of the number lines, and what we can actually do is create the coordinate plane by extending the two number lines to include negatives. So basically the exact same coordinate plane that we had before, but now it's including all of the negative versions of those numbers, okay? So on the coordinate plane, we actually have the same graph that we looked at in the last lesson here. This is called quadrant 1. We write that like the letter I, or if it bothers you, you can write it as the number 1. And so this is quadrant 1, okay? The next one over here is quadrant 2. And then we'll keep going down to quadrant 3. And then finally we have quadrant 4, which is written like this. These numbers are called Roman numerals. You will see them when you see the names of the quadrants. So it's important to make sure that you know how to read at least these first 4 Roman numerals, okay? Now this might look a little bit confusing. There's actually an easy way to remember it. So the word coordinate plane starts with a C. If you draw a big C on this coordinate plane, it tells you the order of the quadrants. So we start here, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And that can help you remember the order, okay? You always start with quadrant 1, which is all the positives, okay? Which brings me to this next part. In quadrant 1, everything is positive. The x coordinate and the y coordinate. In quadrant 2, here's our x, here's our y. In quadrant 2, these x values are negative, whereas the y values are still positive. Okay? In quadrant 3, we have negative x values, negative y values. So they're both negative in quadrant 3. And then finally, quadrant 4, we have negative y values, but positive x values. So that can help you to identify which quadrant you're in without actually graphing a point, if you remember those rules about the positives and negatives in each quadrant. Now let's take a look at some examples here. So for number 1, we want to determine the ordered pair for each point in the table. So point A, I'm going to start at 0, 0, okay? And now instead of just being able to go up and right, we actually can go left and down. But when you go left and down, that's negative numbers. Okay, so we're still going to go over first. So we go over to the -3, and we go up to 3. So it's going to be -3, 3. Okay, so point B, start in the middle again. We're going to go over to here, and then we're going to go down to -3. So the -3 is easy, But what would be between 3 and 4? That's exactly 3.5. It's halfway between. Okay? So then for point, oops, that was point B. So then for point C, we need to go over to the 4, down to the -2. So 4, -2. For point D, we're going to go over 1, up 4. So 1, 4. For point E, we're going to go over, and now we're actually halfway between -4 and -5, which is -4.5. And then we're going to go all the way up, halfway between 4 and 5 again, so 4.5 there as well. And then point F, for point F, we're not going to go left or right at all. We're just going to go straight down to the -4. So that's 0, -4. For point G, we're going to go over 4, up 2. It's a nice quadrant 1 point right there. And then for H, we're going to go over to the -4. And then looks like we're halfway between -1 and -2. So that's going to be -1.5. Okay, and now let's do the exact opposite of this for our last example. We want to plot the points that are given to us. Okay, so here's the origin, 0, 0. All right, let's start with I. So 2.5, -3. So remember, we go left or right, then up or down. So I'm going to go over to the 2, but halfway to the 3. So that's 2.5. And I have to go to -3, so I have to go down. And that is point I. Okay, point K is -4, so I'm going to go over to the -4, and then -5, so down to the -5. For point M, go back to 0, 0. We're going to go over +3 and then down to the -1. Okay, point O says 1/2, 4. So 1/2 is halfway between 0 and 1. So about right here. And then we're going to go up to the +4. That's point O. Okay, point J, start at 0, 0. Go over to the -2. And it says 4.5. So I'm going to go up to the 4 and then halfway to the 5. So right between that 4 and that 5, that's going to be point J. Point L is 0, -2. So I can't move left or right at all. I just have to go straight down to the -2. And that's going to be point L. Okay. Point N, 3.5. So over to the 3 and then halfway to the 4, 3.5. Up to 2.5, so I'm going to go to the 2 and then halfway to the 3. So right here in the middle would be 2.5, and that's point N. And then lastly, we have point P that says to go over 5 and then 0. So we actually just stay right there on the 5 for point P. Okay? And so that is plotting coordinates with negative numbers involved. So this is the full coordinate plane. You just have to remember that when you see a negative, that's going to tell you to go left or down versus positives, which tell you to go right or up. All right?